Okay, this is the afternoon session. We're looking at 20 millimeter thick exterior tile design in various different aspects. We're going to start off with a kind of Q&A session, and I'm really delighted to be joined by Matt Williams, who is basically UK's Mr. Tile, 13 years CEO of Tops Tiles. He then retired from the tile industry. In the meantime, set up Styled, which is the exterior brand we're going to talk about, and has recently acquired Tile Giant just to complete his full retirement from the tile industry. He is now back in another multi-site retailer. And I'm delighted he's come to talk with us tonight or this afternoon about exterior tile design. So I'm going to do the slide thing, and Matt's going to talk.
Hello.
So if you can hear me, yeah, cool. What we're going to do is we'll start with installation alternatives. So I guess the first question, Matt, is what is the most popular installation method that you're finding for Styles customers? Is that changing, and do you see it changing in the short to medium term?
Yeah, I mean, listen, hello everyone, by the way. Yeah, we're still seeing mortar being probably anywhere between 85% of the installations that we're seeing and that we're supplying into. The market's still dominated by it, really. And then we have seen pedestals, the demand for pedestals pick up. And especially when the show garden, which we'll come on to talk about in a second, when people come to the show garden, that's completely installed on pedestals, very cheap, bog standard pedestals. And actually, people get quite into it when they see it. They suddenly it sparks their imagination that it doesn't necessarily have to be permanent, that they could recycle them, sell them on, and if they got a change of heart or they want to have a change of design in their gardens, that they can just put it up. And actually, the farm which we operate from, they're doing a barn conversion, a very large barn conversion there, and actually they've decided to pour a concrete slab and lay them on pedestals as a result of what they saw at the show garden. So it's quite interesting. I think it's still, listen, it's still the vast minority of the installations that we're seeing, but we're growing a bit.
One of the things that we're certainly seeing in the professional market is that pedestals are there because you can incorporate, apart from the drainage option, putting in wiring for lighting, that sort of thing. And with the growth of outdoor kitchens, do you think that's going to drive the pedestal market in the domestic field?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's so much easier. The pedestals is so much easier if you've got a perfect concrete slab to lay onto. When you're talking about actually laying it onto compacted Type 1 MOT or something that's, or Type 1, even Type 1 MOT, which has had like a lean cement mix thrown over the top of it to create a sort of crust on the top. I'm slightly wary of advising people to go for pedestals without a concrete slab, just because I haven't seen it work enough in terms of putting pedestals on top of compacted Type 1 MOT. I'm told it's absolutely fine, but I've just never seen it myself. So I think unless people are willing to invest in pouring the concrete, which actually, if you compare the economics of pouring a concrete slab compared to getting it professionally fitted, it's actually not bad. Pouring a concrete slab and using pedestals is pretty comparable with the alternative, and you get a lot more flexibility, as you say, around services and the like, and also if you ever wanted to change it in the future, it's just a vastly easier thing to do.
Okay, so if we move on to the actual products that people are laying, I've put together a few slides here which are based on Styles' portfolio, and I've just broken it down one product at a time. So if we start with stone effect porcelain, what are the most popular types of stone that you're seeing at the moment, and is that changing?
Yeah, it definitely is changing. I think what we're seeing in the outdoor market is something akin to what we saw in the interior market, and but I mean, in the outdoor market, we're starting from a different place, which is it's dominated by stone, or it has been dominated by stone. In the interior market, stone was still the minority compared to tiles, and actually we saw that we saw stone get more marginalized as porcelain became more and more advanced in terms of its ability to imitate stone. And I think we'll see the same thing outside, where porcelain will continue to take share from stone. And that's not to say that there isn't a place for stone. It's okay. I know. I realize I'm at a stone show, and there'll always be a place for stone. I think that, but what I think we're going to start to see, certainly within the stone effects in porcelain, is whereby we initially started off with it being a substitute to sort of sandstone, predominantly from India. I think what we'll start to see is actually some of the higher value stones will be substituted by porcelain, which we haven't seen before, but we're actually starting to see come through. Certainly in terms of the sales that we're seeing come through in styled, is actually we're getting people who would have thought about York stones or some local indigenous stones in the UK, where they could be paying £100 a metre plus quite easily, that they're starting to think about porcelain. And we've seen some actually really encouraging signs of that, where it feels like the market in porcelain is certainly splitting, and you've got a sort of a commoditized route, and then you've got the other route, which is sort of more value led and design led, and actually people not just substituting cheap stones, but actually substituting higher value stones as well.
So do you think the exterior market's going to follow the similar trend where we're seeing it in interior large format tiling? They're starting to create reproductions of tones that aren't viable as natural stones because they'll be too friable or too expensive or too rare.
Yeah, I mean, for many stones, just to cut a piece of stone that size, it would have to be incredibly thick to achieve that. And yeah, we're definitely seeing a move to larger formats. So 6120 is now our best-selling format. It's styled, and I don't think that's representative of the market itself, but it definitely seems to be that customer that's looking to move up the value chain in porcelain is taking on bigger sizes. We did our first sale in 120 by 120 2cm, which is a hell of a beast of a thing. But the customer wanted to continue the indoor size outside, and they had 120 inside. So there was limited places to go for it.
And are you getting the same kind of interest in some of the traditional stones which had kind of fallen out of fashion, like I think French limestone and some of the and sort of travertine effects? Is that happening in the exterior market?
Yeah, very much so. When we started the business, I mean, the business is just more than a year old now. When we started the business, everyone was telling us that it was the opposite in terms of colours, the interior colours that you find outside. So that you'd be with grey number one, sort of dark blacks, anthracites number two, and beige or lighter tones number three. We found the opposite, actually. We found that the light beige, creamy tones, now even tiptoeing into white, really, outside have been our best sellers. And it's very interesting. I think it's moved around a hell of a lot in that last 14 months. And when you think that it really only kicked off when there was the shipping crisis out of the Far East, it's been on a hell of a journey in that sort of time since then.
Okay, so we move on to cement effects. I mean, you say it was a market dominated by natural stone, but a lot of outdoor spaces in the UK have got pretty ugly cement tiles. Is that something that people still aspire to? Do they look at that and think, oh yeah, I can do that, but do it better? Or is it, do you think that's a kind of a backwater for exterior tile design?
Yeah, I don't see cement tiles, sort of traditional cement tiles, being a look that people crave for, because they sort of tend to be cement that's trying to look like stone and doing quite a bad job of it.
Yeah.
And no, what we're seeing in terms of concrete effects is people who have had concrete effects inside wanting to take that look outside. And yeah, we're seeing a growing trend. I mean, it's a trend that's been around for a long time. The indoor outdoor look and the seamless finish has been around for a while, but actually creeping into much bigger sizes now.
Okay, and so what about the tiles that put two or three different things together? So concrete and mixed concrete and stone, or some of the colorations from timber effects and moving them with concrete. Those kind of sort of porcelain materials
Yeah,
that they're loosely based on two or three different things, and they're
yeah,
fused and
yeah.
create
Very
something new.
very popular. The concrete stone mixes are popular. So the sort of mixes of wood and concrete, I don't think ever really kicked off in a big meaningful way indoors. So and it just doesn't seem to work. Doesn't seem to chime with customers so much, that one. But definitely the mixed surfaces in terms of concrete and stone. Yeah,
And what kind of colours are we looking at? Again, is it paler or
very
darker?
much paler. Yeah, we're seeing the sort of yeah, the light greys, very light beiges, those sort of colours really coming through. I think you've got one of the pictures of one of Connaught there, which is a stone concrete mix.
Yeah. Now, obviously, Style is quite a sort of upmarket brand. What about marbles? I mean, are you seeing porcelain marble effects being used outside? Is the because it's to me? I mean, obviously, if you spend a lot of time in Italy or whatever, you're used to that. But I mean, I can't remember, the same equivalent in the UK. But I can also see people aspiring to it. So is that something that's coming down the line?
If it is coming down the line, it's taken a bit of time getting here, and it's one of these things that there have actually been some very good marble effects. We had one ourselves. It's not been amazing. It's not. It's certainly not anything like the sort of marble craze, the interior marble craze that we've seen. Um, Using it in terms of outdoor worktops or vertical spaces, I think there's more of an opportunity there, and actually we're very keen at Style to get people to start thinking about their vertical spaces outside as well and what they can do with those, because quite a lot of the time, if you're our big thesis at Style was actually you're going to see lots of the trends that we saw inside come outside because it's the new room, right, and outdoor kitchens and everything else. And actually, what we're really keen to do is to get people to start to look up and think about vertical spaces and how they can use that with, I don't know, amazing corten steel effects, porcelains, and just, it's an amazing product which is so versatile. You can really start to inject color and pattern actually into vertical spaces. I think it almost feels like it sits better in those spaces than it does on the floor.
But if they're thinking about marble for these vertical spaces, what's stopping them putting it down on the floor? Is it because they actually kind of referring back to marble floors that they've found in sort of on holiday in the past, or is it uh, simply a look that's not they don't think works in the UK? What do you
Yeah,
think it is?
I think you got to remember that although I think that it's still, while I think interior trends will move outside, it's still got some way to go on that journey. And I think people still feel more comfortable imitating stone looks than they do anything or something that they would naturally, expect to see outside, maybe with a slightly, better surface or, not quite as. There's lots of the customers that we have like to use some of the new technologies, the anti-slip technologies that are coming out, which feel smooth, but they've got incredible anti-slip properties. because it makes it feel like it's an extension of the inside. So I think maybe the customer will go there with marble on the floor, but they're not there yet. And it may come later, but we're not really there yet. It's a small part of the business.
Okay. Well, the other obvious one, I mean, if you think of external landscaping in the UK, we're talking about decking. I mean, it's huge. And also we're seeing decking effect tiles in the interior space, or ones based on those shipbuilding and various things like that. How important are wood effects to your?
Wood effects we do well with, actually, and I don't think that's necessarily representative of the industry. And I know the manufacturers, it's quite a difficult product to manufacture 2 centimeter thick planks, because you've got quite a lot of potential for bowing on the planks at that length. But we do very well with them, and actually more and more we're seeing that landscapers who are very skilled, actually, the landscapers that we deal with, and they're very keen to embrace new looks and designs, actually, and see if they can do them. Lots of the woods we have landscapers, you use it as a picture frame effect. I don't know if you've heard of it, where they're using a wood effect to basically create a frame around the central piece of paving, and then repeating the internal paving on outside of that picture frame. It looks very effective, and particularly the wood planks really work well with that.
Okay, well, the other thing we're seeing a lot of in the sort of inside out demonstrations at shows are pattern tiles, and anybody who reads what I write, I'm a big fan of the resurgence in the interest of pattern, particularly in floor tiles. Is that something you're starting to see?
Yeah, we are. We actually launched a range of pattern tiles on our Shawford range, which are laser etched, and actually it gave us an opportunity to really sort of test which patterns chimed with our customers. And actually, we've had some very positive responses to that, and it's actually one of the things that we're finding is actually finding suppliers, manufacturers who are willing to sort of jump on board and take a bit of a risk in terms of, because we like to think we've done the testing of the market part with the laser etching. We're looking to sort of partner up with some manufacturers who can talk to us about producing some of these actually on printed designs.
The other thing we've seen coming back into mainstream sort of floor tiles has been terracotta cotto effects, particularly the lighter ones, the less sort of maybe traditional or maybe more Mediterranean sort of cotta style.
Yeah.
How are they doing for you?
Yeah, very well, actually. We've got a terracotta cobble, a porcelain terracotta cobble, which is a particular favourite of mine, just because terracotta, as much as, well, I certainly love it as a product, the real thing is not really suitable for English weather, and being a porous product. So the terracotta effects, I think have got good legs to be a really a trend in the outdoor as much as they are inside.
Are people choosing them in the kind of traditional sizes, or are they embracing new variants?
Well, the ones that we've got are 20 by 30 and 20 by 20 cobbles. So we're looking to expand the terracotta ranges that we've got in the business. So that's all we've got to go against at the moment. But yeah, there's definitely a move to the colour, actually, more than anything. I don't think it necessarily has to be real terracotta. For some people it will be, but for some people they have to have stone. But I think that the cotto colour is definitely one for the next few years.
Okay. Ryan, who was doing his thing, he came up the great phrase of, well, I don't know if he came up with it, but I really like it, of twisting mid-century modern to middle-aged modern, the kind of aspiration to the castle look in your garden. And if I was looking for that, I would be going for some kind of floor tile, a pattern floor tile based on using different modular sizes together. Obviously, Opus Romano being the big daddy of them all. Is that something that you sell?
We do, yeah, we do sell a modular effect. We've had limited success actually with it. It's at the sort of upper end of our price in terms of ranges. But yeah, we've had lots of interest, but not huge amounts of sales actually going through that. What we do see is some interest around different edges, and actually people just willing to sort of move away from just the traditional rectified edge and actually trying to recreate more sort of natural stone edges, whether that be pillowed edges or more rustic edges. We've seen probably more interest in that than we have the actual modular formats.
One of the things, my wife, who reads a lot of upscale interior design magazines with a view to blowing our budget in the house that we're building, likes the idea of she's sort of putting an island unit for an outdoor kitchen, and then framing it with a sort of a patterned rug, effectively out of tile, and then laying that into the background.
That. Yeah, we have definitely seen that, and actually the idea of a rug is definitely a big trend.
Okay,
definitely seeing that.
If we actually talk about the physical nature of these tiles, for me the most exciting thing have been these new soft finish tiles that have got ultra good slip resistance, perform even better in the wet than they do in the dry, but they allow you to have a seamless aesthetic inside and out. How do you see those? Are they going to be big for style going forward?
Yeah, I think they are. I mean, they're already, they're already pretty big now. And actually, we've seen people actually just continue with some people continue with the 2 centimeter tile inside. If they've got some sort of new extension or new build house, they're actually quite happy with 2 centimeter tile, and actually they just continue it. So they've got exactly the same finish moving from inside to out. And I think that for the people who want their outside to be an extension of their inside, I think it's a great way forward. And especially if you combine it with a grout that's a pushing grout that's acceptable for the outdoor, then you can really complete that indoor-outdoor look. And more people with bifolding doors, but actually bifolding doors which go around corners, if you know what I mean. It's sort of L-shaped bifolding doors, which really with no column on the corner, actually it really accentuates that sort of indoor-outdoor look and blurring the lines between indoor and outdoor.
Okay, so I have to put up the most boring slide now, which is all the formats that you sell. Are there any here? Is there any particular format you see dying off, and any you think are coming up, or is it largely depending on what you're selling rather than the size?
I think we're definitely seeing a move to bigger sizes, and I didn't think we'd ever sell 120 by 120 2 centimeter tile. I mean, as I said, it's the sort of I daren't go anywhere near it in terms of being in any sort of way involved in the lifting of it. I mean, I can only imagine. But it actually, when you see it down, it's weird. It doesn't actually look that big.
Yeah.
It's more when you see it sort of, and you can see the depth to it as well. So I think that there's a continued move to bigger sizes. I think that people are looking to try and create a different look. I think the 60 by 60 has been a bit overdone, and I think 60 by 90 is quite a traditional stone size, which I think will always have its place. But I don't think you don't have the same availability of 1 centimeter thick tiles in 60 by 90. It's just not a size that we've had in interiors really until the 2 centimeter porcelain came along. So I think that we'll continue to see moves up and down in terms of size. I think that more people will look to cobbles and cobble-sized stones as well, but also to bigger sizes. I think the middle ground will probably be a little bit vacated.
Okay, and if we could just turn to the sort of thing that probably makes you unique as a company, your show garden.
Yeah.
I've got a series of slides here, but I think it'd be good if you just talk us through what you were trying to achieve and how well you think you've done it, really.
Yeah. Well, we started style. My business partner and I, Sagrin, who worked with me at Tops for a long period of time, and ran our Dutch operation at Tops as well. He and I were looking to get back into the tile business. He's got his own tile shop in Chelmsford. We were looking to get back into the tile business, and we had a run at a couple of other tile businesses, and and missed out on those, and actually thought, well, listen, we could probably be the bridesmaid and never the bride here in terms of getting back into the tile business. So let's just start one. And we were very into 2 centimeter porcelain and thought, well, let's start with that. And had good support from suppliers who I've known for a long time, and imported a few containers, set up the website, and got cracking, and actually had a really good response. And then before you knew it, we sort of suddenly thought, well, I think we need a show garden to really show this stuff off. And we were very lucky that we had a very supportive landlord who was sort of as mad as we were, and agreed to pour us a concrete slab to lay all the tiles onto, which we did, and did it in sort of record time, and lots of manual labour by all of us to get it done. And we managed to get it done to host a landscapers day and also a garden designers evening. Unfortunately, it was the day after the Queen died, so we had a few people no show, but we still had a good turnout actually for both events. And it was a really brilliant space actually, and it's always surprising how many people actually find you. We were in the middle of nowhere in the Oxfordshire countryside, but it makes a really good event space, and the customers who do come to see us absolutely love it.
The thing I immediately noticed about it was how well accessorized it is. I mean, you're selling a lifestyle, aren't you? You're not selling tiles.
Yeah, I think there is part of that, yeah, for sure. And I think that people are just, it sounds sort of mad to do it, but actually it feels completely natural. And people come there, and you're seeing the product in the setting that it's eventually going to be, and it's incredibly versatile because of the pedestals, and the whole thing's laid on pedestals. I mean, we're already thinking about our next iteration of displays and what we want to do, and because it's basically arranged as a sort of cross pathway with 4 separate room effects, and so we can change it all at the drop of a hat, because you just pick up the tiles and put the new ones down. And so yeah, we're really keen to keep on pushing with things like picture framing and demonstrating to customers how they can create rug effects, picture framing. We're even thinking about doing a basket weave, a really sort of big basket weave with 60 by 90s and some square tiles in there. So you can have a lot of fun with it, and you can really lift people's thinking. One of the sections that we've got, we call the boat deck, which has got the wood effect rug, like a ladder. I don't know if we've got a shot of it. No, we haven't got a shot of it there, unfortunately. But I'm amazed at how many times we sell exactly that format, exactly that layout to customers. And it's quite an adventurous thing to do for someone to put a sort of big porcelain timber effect rug in the center of a patio. That's quite out there, but people see it and they love it. I think that's the main thing, is that for a lot of people they need to see it.
Yeah, that was going to be my final question, was how many of your customers come knowing what they want, how many come to get inspiration, and how many take sort of an English interior, so York paving or whatever. What's driving them, and how are you responding to fulfill their needs or show them what they want?
Well, I think it's if you consider I mean, in hindsight, it was a pretty sort of foolish thing to do to start an online porcelain paving company, because actually getting samples to people is a challenge. And we send generous cut samples to customers, 10 by 14, but that still doesn't really give them a great representation of what they're going to end up with, because you're talking about a 10 by 14 cut of probably a 60 by 90, let's say, which has got, I don't know, 16 to 20 different faces to the canvas. You're giving them like a snippet of one tile, which is part of a group of 20. So it's not brilliant. And so, but we do sell like that, amazingly. And but there are plenty of customers who want to see it. So we're just about to launch Styles range into Tile Giant, and those samples available at all Tile Giants very soon, in the next couple of weeks.
And is there anything coming down the pipe we've not thought of? Are we going to suddenly see an explosion of cement affecting caustics, or are mosaics going to make a comeback, or glass tiles, or is there anything else that you'd take a real punt on and say, I think that's going to be big in the next 5 years?
I think that in the next 5 years we will see a lot more colour come outside, and I think it will start with vertical spaces, but I think it will eventually work its way into floors, and it will be accent pieces to begin with on the floor, and then I think you'll see that come through more and more. We're already starting to see some of it with terracotta being mixed with quite vibrant colours, and like all of these things, it's cyclical, really. We've seen it; it's all been done before, but it's just refinding those different trends, and I think that's probably one to watch out for, which is terracotta and very vibrant colours.
Excellent, thanks, Matt. So, any questions, anybody? Okay.
Hi.
Microphone coming.
So you were saying it's mostly mortared for the installations that you're seeing with your clients. Are you doing any new construction in say multifamily projects on patios and balconies and things like that? It's something that I've found it has to be a forethought from the designers, and I'm wondering what it's like here.
Yeah, we have seen a number of balconies and patios come through, purely by dint of what they are. They're not huge transactions typically, and it's so that it's a bit difficult to sort of really make anything significant out of them. From our perspective, they don't really stand out in your memory, because there's some of the transactions on exteriors using mortar are huge.
Yeah.
And your mind, as a retailer, your mind naturally sort of gravitates to those, but it's beginning to have more impact, and definitely with what needs to be done in terms of removing all combustible materials from balconies here in the UK. That's still ongoing, right? The stripping away of combustible cladding and decking. My parents' apartment in Wapping is going to be done next month, and that's a whole load of stuff that needs to be replaced and stripped away.
Yeah, I only ask because Vancouver's very rainy. That's where I'm from. It's very similar to here, and dealing with a mortared installation with heavy rain, something like the pedestal system makes a whole lot of sense, especially for a multifamily developer where it's an investment property. But you do have to get their designers sort of thinking about that, so that you've got the downset on the patio slab, so that you can have that seamless run.
Yeah, Yeah. I mean, yeah, you need to. Yeah, you're right. You need to think in advance, but I mean, the installation costs are huge in the UK.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you
but if
got people talking for mortar. I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So actually, if you are thinking, you're right. If you are thinking far enough ahead, you probably would go. I'm not going to let any of my landscaper clients know that I'm saying it, but the reality is that some of them are charging £200 a square meter,
Yeah.
which is
That's huge.
huge.
Yeah.
And you go, well, why is anyone quibbling about the price of the paving if the cost of the installation is £200 a square meter? It's just like, come on, that's where the real money is. And if you can, pour a concrete slab for, I don't know, £60 a square meter, something like that, and
pedestals in and have any landscaping crew
but,
do it. Yeah.
but you gotta think ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Sorry.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, very good insight. Right, and a privilege to have you with us. Our next speaker is Ruben Rivero-Ramos from Bestile, who is going to continue our odyssey on 20mm tiles, and he's just going to take the microphone for a walk first. But okay,
Hello.
right, we can hear you good. Okay, Ruben, over to you.
All right. My name is Ruben Rivero. I work for a Spanish company called Bestile. We do indoor and outdoor. We're based in Castellón, and this is my first time doing a talk about something that I suppose I'm still new to this trade. I've been doing tiles for the last 4 years, 4 or 5 years, and I hope I don't bore you in this little talk that hopefully is going to be less than 20 minutes. Basically, I did a presentation where I'm going to be going over some of the trips that I've been doing up and down England, Scotland, Wales, everywhere. So it gave me a good idea of what's going on in with landscapers, with products coming from other countries, and like I said, something that some of you already know what's going on, but it's going to be a mix of Bestile as our company and what I've seen out there. So the first slide is basically the advantages of 20mm porcelain, which I think is a super product. There's a lot in the market, but I'm a high believer that 20mm, especially for the lifestyle that couples and families are having these days, it is something that very beneficial compared to sandstone. Spain and Bestile is not a sandstone place. We have 2 factories where we make 20mm product, and we have increased sizes in the last 2 years. The latest size has been 6090. We produce 4590s as well, porcelain cobbles, and obviously some of the advantages that we see and why we believe that there is a superfood, that is a super product, is the advantages that is scratch free, ivy resistant, low maintenance effect, and this is something that for the modern life, where relationships and the husband, the wife, everybody wants to have an equal role, go home, relax a bit, low maintenance effect is really a big thing. So that's why I believe, especially if you're throwing parties or whatever, you pour wine, you pour coffee, is a super product. So as Matt was saying, this is something that is just going to keep growing in this market, with different formats, different edges, different colors, different textures, but I can see this growing rapidly in the next 3-4 years. One of the things that when I've been traveling and visiting places, people that do outdoor tiles and they want to get into outdoor tiles, there's always lots of questions about, for example, people that don't know, do they require a ceiling I've seen people sealing porcelain, and it doesn't require sealing, which is one of the major advantages. A lot of people ask, can you have a car on top of it? At least our tiles, the 20 millimeter tiles from Bestile, you can. We show, and every tile has an ID, so we provide all the technicalities, so you can show we can show the end consumer the uses that you can have. Obviously, for the winter, when it's cold outside, and you don't want your flooring to freeze. Obviously, it's resistant to salt, and that is another question that they ask is, do they detonify? They don't detonify, so that's why it is something that is still quite unfamiliar in the UK. But as we see this more happening and more present in the UK, I think especially stone layers, who are the ones that are doing this job, will become more and more familiar, and people will become more accustomed to this type of product. One of the interesting things that we've seen is, like, in the UK, a lot of people like to lay. I notice. I mean, me being Spanish, I amaze myself the amount of tile patterns that you can see outside, and one of the the interesting ones that I see, obviously, is the linear brick, the step ladder, the stagger brick bound, and the brick bound. I mean, these are sort of like techniques and way of laying the tiles that are fairly simple to do, and it is something that it can make your outdoor area very very appealing, very attractive, etc. We are working at the moment on developing, as Matt was saying, that there was modular effect tiles. We're working on a couple of pattern techniques within the molds that we own. And one is going to be a Magna pattern, which is 90, 60, 60, 60, 60, 30, 30, 30. And the three size modular pattern, which is 120 by 60, 90, 60, and 30, 30. We believe that when you have an outdoor porcelain and everything is the same tone, the market gets flooded. So when you start creating a modular pattern that it comes in different coloring and different graphics, different pattern, you're creating a design that it's very natural with an ethical product. So this is why we are sort of moving towards. So this the tricky thing is always going to be repack everything in pallets, but that is one of the things that we're trying to do. Joints. I wanted to speak a bit about joints. A lot of people ask us. Well, we've seen here a lot wide joints, which I suppose this is stone tiles. They always have a wide joint, like 5 millimeter joints. When we make product, we weren't aware of this, because we make product that is rectified, and people still lay the tiles with a 5 millimeter joints, and we suppose this is due to the fact that stone layers suddenly they have to go and lay porcelain outdoor tiles. So that defeats a bit the purpose of having a rectified tile, but still looks beautiful. The joint, I think, is beautiful if it's laid well. So a lot of people ask us, should it be rectified or should it be unrectified? It doesn't really matter. That's, I think, the reality. However, we're selling more rectified material, And with depending on the aesthetics of the product, sometimes having a non-rectified product is always going to be a bit more round on the edges. So that sort of like defines a product better. In terms of having the joint thinner or wider, it depends on the look that you want to give. But for me, I would like to see more and more thinner joints, so you see more a seamless effect. But I think there is a lot of work that has to be done on educating stone layers and tile layers, who are the ones who are doing this type of work. One of the things, as Matt was saying before, the people who are charging and doing this job like 200 pounds a square meter, and they're taking jobs 3, 4 in one go, that's always going to happen, I suppose. And unluckily for them, these very heavy pieces, they can be now held with gravel, with gravel plus holders, but we see that is always going to be a problem. So I think smaller tiles, especially the 60/90, 60/60s or 45/90s, they're going to remain more popular because a lot of these teams that lay tiles is normally a one-man band, a one man with a van laying tiles because the demand is high. So they can go fast by having a wider joint, or they can go slower and having a thinner joint. So this is obviously entirely up to them. But we're seeing a lot of like customers always debating about this. The reality is that between 1 millimeter to 5 millimeter joints is completely acceptable. The look is going to be different, but this is entirely up to them. We make the tiles. People like Matt, they supply the tiles. They deal a lot with the headaches, but we are, everything is really possible with porcelain, but it just comes down to taste and how it gets done. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I suppose with the next people coming who are experts in anti-slip methods, we get a lot of people touching our tiles and saying this is not rough enough. I think us as a Spanish company, we care about the feel of it when you touch with your hand or when you touch with your feet. We use something called granilla pulida, which is polished granules that gives you a special feel to it that is easy to clean. And when it's wet, the material is wet, it's still plus 36. So this is something that not necessarily touching it means that it's plus 36 or that it's smooth, it's plus 36. So some of the trips I saw, the general feeling is like if it's rough, it's anti-slip. If it's not rough, it's not anti-slip. So anyway, all of our products are anti-slip. You're not gonna fall on it, and definitely people who buy our tiles, they're not going to be buying these tiles so people fall. So anyway, that's a bit about the anti-slip. Like I said, Stephen after is going to be able to answer more questions about this, which is normally pendulum test and the general figure, which is plus 36. The last slide that I wanted to talk about is really rectangular versus square. I mean, I already discussed something about modular effect tiles, which I personally like a lot. I can see them being a bit of a headache for an experienced tile layers, and it takes longer time. And those 200 pounds that Matt was mentioning before could be suddenly 300 pounds. But the difference between square and rectangle, I think we sell a lot more rectangles. You can play around a lot more with the tiles, and we will always keep our 60/90s, 61/20s, 45/90s in cobbles or 20/30s. But again, you can also play around with 60 by 60s, targeting them and it's completely up to the end consumer and the buyers, of course, who are especially those that buy the tiles, and they don't want to be buying things that they won't sell regionally or nationally. And I think that covers. I was trying to squeeze in to stay within the 20 minutes. I hope I didn't bore you too much, and please feel free to ask any questions.
Thank you, Ruben. Okay, this is the final session of the afternoon. We get two for the price of one. Standing at the lectern is Richard Bowman, who is an international, renowned expert on slip resistance, and Stephen Thorpe here, who is from the UK, equally well renowned. They are going to. I'm actually not 100% sure what they're going to talk about, but it's obviously something to do with testing and slip resistance. One of these is going to work, and one of them is just here to demonstrate. But now you can start, Richard. So lovely to have you here. Thank you for traveling all this way to be with us, and far away.
Thanks very much, Joe. Simplifying slip resistance is not simple. So this is a dress rehearsal for what we would like to do. Are you all set up, Steve?
I don't know.
Yep, okay. Well, Steve might just run through the basics for how to conduct a test.
Okay. Can you hear me through this mic? Yeah. Okay. So I've got two machines set up here, one by Monroe, the other one manufactured by a different company, KSS. They look slightly different, but they do exactly the same job. Technically, they're the same, and the little bit that does all the work is identical on both machines. Got a scale here, which is in pendulum test values, PTVs, and the workplace regulator, the health and safety executives, say that 36 in the condition that you're going to be working in is a low risk of slipping. Anything, a PTV lower than 36 means the risk of slipping is increasing. And when it gets down below 24, that you're getting to a high risk of slip. And that's when, if you have got an HSE inspector with you, that's when they start to get excited. So it's best not to get them excited if you can. We've got a standard rubber slider on here. There's actually two different ones that are used. I'm using the one that's used for shod work, so where people have got footwear on. I set a contact area with the surface that we're interested in. So starts in one particular place, moves across, finishes another. And that's just defined on that ruler there. All of this testing is being done according to EN 16165. You can just pass it around if you want. The latest standard. And I've got a surface here which has been included in some testing work that's going around internationally, trying to decide on the precision and accuracy of this machine. I've not tested this surface before, so I don't know what I'm going to get, and I don't know what's going to happen when I perhaps abrade it. So we'll see what happens, and we'll go from there. So this is a surface I would normally test in the dry, but for speed, I'm just going to wet the surface. This is just water, plain tap water. And when I do a test, catch the arm, and it's coming in at about 45. So in that condition, it's well clear of the 36 number. What I'm going to do now is just take, this is just the sort of pad that you might have in your kitchen to people clean dishes anymore, I don't know, but if you do, it would be something like this. And it's not a million miles away from what you might have on a cleaning machine. And let's see what it's done, if anything, to that number. Nothing. Try one more time. Few points, starting to come down. So even that tiny amount of wear, that surface is starting to change. And that's one of the things that Richard is going to talk about in some detail. And it's one of the topics in this area that's very current. It's being talked about in standards committees. It's being talked about by the regulators, and it's to give you an idea of what you've actually got, not what it says on the case, what it is when it comes off the production line, but what it is when it's installed and being used in service.
Thanks very much, Steve. So it came down from 45
To 40.
to 40. Just that small amount of wear. And if you get one of these, you can rub it on your skin and it doesn't hurt at all. So if you'd like to have a shave, gentlemen, something to wake you up this time of the day.
It's very like a cleaning pad on a machine.
Okay, now I'm rocking the boat somewhat in that we've just published a new standard EN 16165, and I'm saying it's not as good as it should be for several reasons, and I'll give you an Australian perspective. Now, this is going to be the hardest thing to understand, but basically it's saying that slips depend on intrinsic aspects of what we are as people. We've got limitations, so slips are going to depend on the subject, their step length, speed, and how big, short, heavy, light, whatever they are, what their vision is like, how their reactions and strength may have changed as they get older. So everybody is different, and on any given day, we may be more capable of walking than others. So the variability that we see when we put people in a laboratory and make them walk across force plates is quite considerable. So in this particular slide, we are seeing or saying that slip will not occur for people who are walking normally if they are above the top line where this person is walking. In the black area, we're saying that slip will occur. In between, there's a huge grey zone. So you don't go from a situation of non-slip to slip automatically. There's a region in between. And I've tried to put on the same slide the UK Slip Resistance Group guideline classifications. There is no direct correlation between the direct dynamic coefficient of friction that we use with the pendulum and the static work that this was done in Japan. So there's lots of limitations associated with everything, and you've got to look at it very carefully. I'm here to simplify things, not to complicate them, so I won't say any more on the subject other than you've got this big range during which people may or may not slip, depending on how they walk, whether they're being cautious, whether they're looking, etc. Now, this is some work that was done in Castellón, where I was until yesterday morning. But what you can see here on the left-hand side, the number of people walking over tiles, and just pointing out the first, we've got a value of 60, and at the other end of the scale, that's coming down to about 35 or 34 after almost 120,000 people have walked down the corridor. So it's come down a long way in a similar way to the test that Steve demonstrated. That is what has been done on the right-hand side, and very similar behavior. The colours, unfortunately, that we used in this doctoral thesis, so that the same tile that was used, 215, is purple in one chart and orange in the other. So that's not demystifying or simplifying anything. But there is very similar behavior between the two. So there is the ability to be using accelerated wear conditioning protocols to predict the slip resistance of particular types of tiles. So this gives us an indication of the life cycle performance. It's all going to vary very much depending on the circumstances where things are put. So this is some work that was done in Australia. This is the technology that we use. We have a slider pad, specifically the Scotch-Brite. The pad gets attached underneath the friction boat and just goes backwards and forwards. So it's very simple, very easy to do. You wouldn't believe how much they charge for this particular piece of equipment, but it is easy to build yourself or have somebody build it for you. Now, this is looking at the data that for several different tiles, it's all got this characteristic shape of coming down. And in work that was done almost 20 years ago, McDonald's, the restaurant company, decided that what they wanted was after 500 cycles to have a value of 35 ppm. So if you want to get into McDonald's, that's what you had to do. Now, if we go back to the Spanish work, if we were to say that 500 cycles of the Australian method was equivalent to 5 cycles of the Spanish method, then in looking at the right-hand side, only one of these tiles would actually qualify for consideration. Now, these were all fairly smooth surfaced tiles with a little bit of a gritty finish. There are logical improvements that can be made to 16165. I'm not going to go into them. I talked about that in Toronto last week. But the first opportunity to change them will be in an Australian standard that we are about to prepare. I think I've got a standards meeting overnight, so I can tell the slip resistance group what happened first thing tomorrow morning. But there's a possibility that ISO may adopt an international test method that would be better than the European. These things all take time. In the British standard, we have 2 inclining platform tests and the pendulum test wet and dry, and a bit of a rubbishy test. So the standard says the test methods given in this document cannot be compared with each other, and it's quite right because the techniques are very different. The pendulum test method is incompatible with the 2016 UK slip resistance guidelines, which are being updated and should be available soon. Since 1999, the Australian standard has had 3 of the 4 test methods that have come out in the new European standard, plus a 4th test method that is as rubbishy as the 4th one in the new European standard. So we are very much used to doing this testing, and we tend to put our primary emphasis on the pendulum because the testing can be done in situ, whereas the inclining platform tests can only be done in the laboratory. We also have guidance where we have tabulated several different areas and we give recommendations as to the minimum level of slip resistance that should be in those areas. Often that minimum requirement is less than 35. It's anticipated that those areas will be dry, but because we have one test method that is looking at new surface materials, or one standard looking at new surface materials, and which provides classifications, the other test method is looking at existing surfaces. So the 2 are not directly linked. So in our building code, it calls up information based on the new material, but for assessing the built environment, we have a separate standard so that you don't compare them directly. You can't say that there's a problem, but there's lots of litigation at times when the slip resistance changes during installation because somebody has cleaned the grout off the surface using a pad. I mean, it might just be the grout itself with a sponge, that is causing the change in the slip resistance. But I'm basically saying, with most of the people that have got displays here, if they have technical literature that shows the slip resistance value, by the time you've installed that product, you may not be getting that level of slip resistance. So we are looking at changing what we are doing to have an option of specifying products based on the value after the accelerated wear conditioning, which is to give you, hopefully, the life cycle performance, which is going to be dependent on following the manufacturer's instructions for cleaning, because most of the loss of slip resistance in shopping centres and the like is due to the cleaning processes that are being formed, because they're all using cleaning pads that are probably, not much different from this one, and yet you're getting the pressure of the machine attacking the tile every day. Show me the data. It's been a catch cry of mine for a long period of time, because there is almost no data that is publicly accessible. And when you look here at some 4,300 tests that's published in a paper, how do you tell what from what? You've got wet and dry on the same publication, on the same graph. We normally have dry results that are far higher than wet results. Even for a very slippery tile, it'll have a very high dry slip resistance. In Australia, we generally don't bother measuring the dry slip resistance because it's not going to tell you anything unless you're investigating an accident. Maybe if you're doing an audit. It's interesting. Ideally, when we publish data, we should be explaining why it's relevant and how data can be used. But in this particular slide, the results that were less than 55 have been retested, and where we have the maximum number of results, that's where the majority of the tiles that have been cleaned, or surfaces that have been cleaned, concretes, whatever, have moved from the left-hand side to be very much centered around 65 BPM. So that shows you the value of doing that type of testing. Fouling of surfaces where it's often combined. It's very important to do the auditing and to have a logical sampling plan so that you can compare like with like. This is just more of the Spanish data. I don't know if any of Ruben's tiles were involved in this, but all of them basically decline. This is looking at wavy profiles. The previous one was on smooth profiles. These have got somewhat of a rougher texture, but they are going down as the surface profile changes from being flat to wavy and to then being more structured and irregular. The tile becomes harder to clean, and that becomes a problem in itself. This is where we have irregular relief. There's more of a variation in the starting point, but they're all coming down in the same way. And the Spanish have found that in their building code, which said you shall remain above a certain value, people specified on the ex-factory value, and then found that where class 3 was required, they were down in class 1 fairly quickly. So they've got a major problem in their building regulations. With value engineering, where everybody wants to cut the price of materials, this tends to happen at the end of projects, and the materials that are often most affected are going to be the surface finishes. It's a risky proposition to change the original architect's specification because you don't know what he was thinking about, what he's provided for. And if anybody changes that, they take on the whole of the design liability. So the architect might be happy knowing that the slip resistance decreases for somebody to value engineer and he's off the hook. But if the slip resistance does decline, at what point does it become unacceptable? We don't know because the data's not there. So do we say anything that goes below 35 has to be replaced? How soon does it have to be replaced? There's a lot of issues to be thought about and to be discussed. This is looking more at the durability of surfaces from a cleaning perspective. This work I've taken from one of Marcel Engel's presentations last year. Marcel is a professor in Germany. He's a member of the UK Slip Resistance Group. We have quite a few international members. But it's important, I think, also to be testing the cleanability of tiles. This is using a washability device, just moving backwards and forwards, similar to the one that I showed you before. A soil is put onto the surface. It's almost like putting boot polish on, letting it dry, and then having a brush that goes across part of it to see whether or not it can be removed. So things like this can be done fairly simply and implemented in quality control procedures and testing at laboratories. So the people who are going to be doing the accelerated wear conditioning could also be doing the cleanability study at the same time. So I may be unpopular with some people if I say, don't do the slip test, but do the conditioning and do the cleanability test. So you'll have more work in the end and you'll be giving your customers far better value for money. So I think this is my second last slide. It's almost a summary. Some products lose slip resistance during installation and much more when facilities are subjected to traffic and cleaning. The ex-factory indications of slip resistance that's found in technical literature are often quite misleading. Some companies will identify the tiles that are likely to give the highest values and they'll publish those, most typically on the white coloured tiles if it's a solid unglazed product. So if you want the ceramic engineering explanation of that, you can ask me later. But a lot of the literature is basically unreliable. I think that you can get a far better indication of slip resistance by using accelerated wear conditioning. There are limitations associated with it. And if the test is too demanding, that's better than being too lenient. So there's a lot of work that we have to do there. Now, we need all of the studies to develop better correlation. It takes time, takes money, but we can't wait forever. So in Australia, we're just going to say, let's go. Because we don't want to have to be replacing tiles in this time where we're looking at everything being as sustainable as possible. We're better to not over-engineer by saying everything has to be 55 when we really only need it to be 30, maybe. If we can say we need it to be 30 and we then don't have people over-specifying and installing products that are very difficult to clean. So we've got to be sensible about that and explain what we're doing. Now, where sealers and other materials are being used, particularly with stones, you've got to have that bespoke tailoring of product with product. It's an unregulated industry. There's a lot of misleading information out there at times, and what may be true of one stone when treated with one product might be quite misleading when it comes to it being used on other products. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that tailoring. And slip resistance treatments are very much the same as well. So my final slide, I believe we need partnerships to accelerate the transformative, inclusive, effective, productive outcomes. And I'm looking at working with organizations like the World Health Organization to try to get this not just in the first world, but into the third world as well. Because there's a disparate rate of falls incidents and crippling of people in third world countries. So we can do something, but we need to work with governments and manufacturers, insurers, everybody across the scheme.
Isn't it? Yeah.
So
Just say one thing, just reinforcing something that Richard said, and that is that there are some weaknesses in the M16165. There are some changes that mean that we've had to revise this document, which is a detailed methodology of how to use this test, warts and all. That the new version should be published within the next few weeks. It is available on the group website. If you want to purchase it, it costs, I think, £60, £70, something like that. But we will be revising that such that if you work to this methodology, you will be complying with EN 16165. The reverse is not necessarily true. If you work to 16165, you're not necessarily working to this. So it's essentially a tighter methodology than the one in the standard. And there are some good reasons for that, and Richard's touched on some of them. So that's just a bit of a plug for the group.
well done, Steve. We'll report back that you performed admirably on all grounds.
Okay. Well, Richard, Steve, thanks very much. I've been writing about this industry for a very long time, and if you can find one subject that is bound to cause controversy, difference of opinion, or whatever, unfortunately, it remains slip resistant. But there is, as I say, new work being undertaken by the TTA and others, and obviously Richard's own one. So I am hopeful that we're getting nearer to clarity, but it is an extremely complicated subject. It's a dynamic subject because, as you said, it's how products are when they leave the factory and how they are once installed, and they're with all the other issues that they face, wear, pollutants, etc. It is a minefield, isn't it? But at least we've got two good guides here to sort of help us through it. But thank you very much, guys.